My mom and her boyfriend were just telling me the story. This past summer, they were out late one night, fishing on a Navajo reservation in Arizona. I can't remember the site, but it was Maricopa County. They had my dog, Sammy, with them. She's very in tune with her surroundings, and will let you know when something is around, and will protect if needed. Suddenly, she just let out a low growl, and stared into the distance. My mom's boyfriend got up to investigate, but Sammy refused to go, and even started whimpering, which is extremely unusual for her. And they could see something, roughly the shape of a man, but with what appeared to be horns on its head. And they didn't make any noise, it just stared. They initially thought that they were pranksters coming around to fuck with people, until they tried to capture them on film. My mom tried to record them on video. You could see their silhouette in the dark, but when she pointed a flashlight at them, you couldn't see them at all. It was like they vanished in the light, and then they would reappear as soon as the light was taken off them. I'd pass it off as my mom and her boyfriend seeing shit, but that doesn't explain why my very alert dog was so bothered. So, yeah, my mom is now a very firm believer in skinwalkers. I was probably 16 or 17 and bombing home from a party on my skidoo late one night. It was a full moon, a cloudless night, and the moon illuminated the hills and trees of the northern prairie landscape. I darted between forests along a trail I knew well. Ahead was the river, but my trail crossed it in a place that was reliably frozen solid, especially in cold Februarys like this one. As I approached the river, my trail was a narrow path woven between poplar and black spruce. All of a sudden, a massive moose, silver in the moonlight, stepped into the trail, blocking my path completely. I hit the brake, nearly flying over the handlebars, and skidded to a stop just before the river. Shaking, I looked up and into the bush, and saw absolutely no evidence of a moose. I figured maybe I was tired, and maybe shouldn't have had the couple beers earlier on. I was still a bit out of sorts as I sat back down and started slowly toward the river. Except, as soon as I saw the river, I saw that it was open. Had I not stopped, I would have hit the open water going too fast to stop in time, on a sled too small and slow to skip across it. I would have fell into the river, all alone at -20 degrees. If I'd have made it out, nobody would have been there to help me. I certainly would have died. I have no explanation for that moose. I'm pretty skeptical. I don't believe in ghosts. But that night, that moose saved my life. And if that's what ghosts are like, well, then I'm not afraid of ghosts. I was camping on a remote beach in the Hong Kong Islands. It was coming into winter, so we were alone on the beach. At about 2 a.m., we decided to take a stroll down by the wash, as you do. It was fairly well lit. It was close to the full moon festival. We kept walking until we almost reached the end of the beach. There, we saw a young lady standing in knee-deep water, staring at the moon. Hong Kong is pretty populated, so we thought that there was another camp nearby that we missed. We continued walking for another 15 or 20 meters, where we reached the rocks. There was a particularly big rock with a flat face, and it had some Chinese written on it. My friend gasped and started pulling me away, almost frantically trying to get back to camp. I can't read Chinese, so I was confused, but when I glanced back to where the lady was, she was gone. Apparently, the writing on the rock was to remember a young woman who had disappeared and was last seen at that location. There was a weird episode in my village. I'm from a really backward place in India. It's really rural, in a backward state, Arunachal Pradesh. It's near China and mostly jungle.
To give you an idea how backward we are, the village got constant electric supply only 10 years ago. So back to my story. My uncle, my father's elder brother, once heard an owl hooting near our house one night around 2 a.m. Since we consider owls hooting a bad omen, my uncle took his gun and tried to shoot the bird down. He pointed his flashlight toward the sound and saw the owl, but as soon as he pointed his gun at it, it flew away. Now, it so happened that after a week or so, we got news that someone in the village had been possessed. My uncle, being one of the elders, had to see what was going on, and I tagged along with him. So, we went to check on the person possessed. It was a man. He was writhing and twisting when my uncle arrived, but as soon as he saw my uncle, he jumped up. He started pointing at my uncle and saying that he wasn't good, and when he was asked why, he said he tried visiting my uncle as an owl, but my uncle tried to shoot him so he flew away. I damn near soiled my pants then and there. The owl hooting was a very minor affair for our family, and we didn't tell anyone about it. I can't explain it. That was the first and last possession incident I went to. Although we have a few cases now and then, I've never had the nerve to go and watch. My dad was driving down a lonely road back home. For context, I'm from a very small rural town, population less than 6,000. The kind of road that divides cornfields, and most of its action comes from when the industrial sprayers hit it with their mix of chemicals and water. My dad had just lost his mother in a car crash a week earlier, a devastating accident where even wearing a seatbelt didn't save her life. I was 4 when she passed. So, Dad is in his work truck, driving, and he mounts a big hill, only to come up on a lonely traveler walking in his lane. He came up on him quick, hit his brakes, swerved, and came to a stop a short distance in front of this person. The person walks up to my dad's truck and gets in the passenger seat. Dad recounted to me he remembered him being very tall. The man, unprompted to get in the truck, is silent. After a moment, my dad says, "I'm sorry, by the grace of God I didn't hit you." To which the man responded, "Indeed, I knew you wouldn't hit me." So, of course, Dad asks, "Where are you headed?" "To the church up the road. I have to be there in 30 minutes. Dad knows the area well and says, "Well, you weren't going to make it walking. That's a long way off." The person smiles and says, "I knew I was going to make it." Being a small town, Dad obliges and they take off. He has nowhere to be. Again, the person is silent. After a couple of miles, Dad asks, "So, what are you doing at the church?" The person smiles again and says that it's just where he needs to go. About this time, the person turns to look at Dad and says, "I need you to know that everything is going to be okay," and says my dad's name. My dad has never seen this man before or ever again. He slows down and says, "What?" "Everything will be okay," and he calls my dad by his name again. Dad comes to a stop and asks him who he is and what his business is. The person smiles, undoes the seatbelt, and climbs out. "This is actually exactly where I should be. Thank you." Stunned, Dad sits there for a moment taking it in. He said that he started to pull away when he looked behind him to see if the man was still walking. He was gone, and the fields to his left and right were harvested in flats. He had simply vanished. Dad recounts this story as part of his testimony in church, and it's always the same. I don't know what that person was, if it was even a person at all, but I know that he, or it, told my dad something he definitely needed to hear that day.